And I call the honourable member for Chifley.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It is a great honour to speak in a debate that will make such a big difference in the lives of many. Parliaments are sometimes confronted by serious decisions that need to be made on behalf of the nation. Decisions made ahead of time or far from a position that some in the general public are comfortable to hold. What is clear to many of us is that many in the Australian public have been well ahead of its parliamentarians. This has become blazingly evident in the last few weeks, where the nation with a strong voice indicated it wants the parliament to remove discriminatory legal barriers set within the Marriage Act. I'm a parliamentarian who will lend my support to this push. And I've been upfront about this since I announced in May 2015 that I would support marriage equality. But that statement itself admits that I was not always a supporter of that effort, and I wasn't. When this matter was considered in 2012, I voted against it. I argued then that I could not detect will in the electorate that I represent to change the Marriage Act. The outcome of the recent marriage postal survey for the Chifley electorate demonstrates that my reading of the local mood was right, where a majority of residents opposed altering the Marriage Act. While my reading of the mood of my fellow residents was right, my actions in opposing this reform were not. And I would like to explain that reasoning in a moment, particularly as it applies in the way I intend to vote on this bill. But going back to 2012, let me reflect on my position then. Back then I maintained a position that I didn't detect a mood for change. However, people from my electorate wanting to see that change and disappointed in my position would say that while others might not have a sense of urgency for change, that change to them made a great deal or meant a great deal. As their representative, constituents would ask me, why can't you support us in the things we want to do in our lives? These situations made me think deeply about this issue. If there was no logical reason to prevent this change, why stand in the way of it? I also reflect on this. As a country, we've welcomed people from nearly every corner of the globe to become Australian citizens. 7 million people have made their home here since the Second World War. Looked different, spoke different, ate different foods, thought differently, acted differently, who might have come from countries where they couldn't do that and paid a high price for difference. Many Australians take great pride in the fact that our nation has become one of the most successful multicultural nations on the planet. This did not happen by accident. There were no magic ingredients. It was a typically Australian, low-key, straightforward commitment to the important principle of fairness that included. It's that commitment to inclusion that I reflect upon now. It was our understanding that if people committed to the nation and its laws, there was a place for them. We did not use our laws to divide, we used them to bind and unite. And I approached the survey and this vote in the very same way, recognising that this is our generation's opportunity to make its down payment to that inclusive approach for the benefit of those that follow, by including, not using the law to exclude. As I've reflected earlier, I represent an area that voted against change. I wish to make some remarks in relation to that. I want to express my profound respect for the views expressed by my fellow residents, some of which have approached me to ask how I could support change when the electorate I proudly represent has a different view. My decision is not taken in defiance or without regard to those views, but I submit this for the consideration of those that question the decision I intend to make. I believe strongly that parliamentarians should think carefully when they propose to legislate to discriminate, that we use our special position as parliamentarians with our ability to cast laws and to do so in a way where we might impose the will of majorities on the way that others live their lives. Remember, this Act will not change the way others who have married live their lives. Nothing changes for them. There is also no change in the way religious bodies express their belief about marriage and how it is formed. Again, nothing changes. This Act will not change the way that others who have married will live their lives, but not voting for this change stops others in the way they wish to live their lives. And this comes to the heart of the view that I have of my role in this place. In a place where we dedicate much of our energies to highlighting difference, I would hope that we could find moments to find strength in common purpose of bringing people together and giving people the space to live their lives unburdened by stigma, free of the sting that comes from being excluded. That's not just how I live my life as a parliamentarian. This is what I believe in deeply as a citizen, as an average person, someone who has benefited from the nation's generosity in allowing my family to settle and participate in its daily life. A nation that has provided me with a humbling honour, the ability to stand in this very spot where I now say I will play my part to ensure my fellow Australians are included, that they can savour in the feeling in just in the way that I have benefited from it. I could make a whole lot of points expressing views about the postal survey process. I'd prefer we focused on the positive important change we are about to make in people's lives. But I would ask those within government who make much of the postal survey process to remember this point. It's probably unlikely that their ears would have felt the sting or hurt felt or triggered by hearing comments made during the survey process. But that hurt was felt, and it may well linger for some time. What we owed those that relied upon positive change to the law was courage, that as parliamentarians we could make those legislative changes free of the process forced upon the nation. In speaking of courage, I would like to reflect on the courage of others who have walked this path well before me, people like Senator Penny Wong, people like Senator Louise Pratt, other colleagues of mine like the member for Griffith, Terry Butler. Also on the other side of the political fence, Senator Dean Smith, who also had to have the courage not just to admit he was wrong, but to make a difference as a result of that. But I also want to express my gratitude for the courage of another colleague of mine, the member for Whitlam, who in days when it was hard to express that view and to translate that view into legislation brought to this place, he not only argued that process within this place, but also outside, where he had to confront views that, expressed today, would be staggering to consider, and the way in which they translated potentially as a threat to his position as a parliamentarian. He displayed exemplary courage, and I wanted to commend him for what he had done, as I said, walking a path, treading that path well before I did. At any rate, we are here now. We should make the change that must be made, and we should ensure that our nation can earn its place as one of the world's most inclusive places.
I thank the honourable member for Chifley.